Well, hello and welcome to Unabashed You, David.
Hello, good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Oh my
Y
goodness.
yes, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm
Oh,
happy to be here.
thank you. It's my pleasure, and I'm really been looking forward to our conversation. Is there anything you want the listeners to know as we get started here?
Oh man, maybe just a quick couple statements or sentences about
Sure.
myself. I'm fortunate and honored to be your nephew.
Yes.
Grew up in close proximity, just a number of blocks away, here in Pacific Beach in San Diego. But I think what I want listeners to know is that I'm really fortunate to be a father of two great children
Hmm.
and the husband of a saint, at least in my opinion, and just having fun, living life, and going through life with the three of them.
Oh, that it's so wonderful. And yes, I have known you your whole life, and you and your wife chose well. And yes, you do have two wonderful kids that you're raising in really just great at a great with great values and all of that. And we've seen that firsthand. What if you were to think of three words to describe yourself, David, what would they be?
Oh man, that's a great question. Let's see. The first one that comes to mind is I would say I'm very contemplative.
Mm,
I'm very much value and appreciate the time. Oh, pardon. My
no
headphone fell
problem.
out.
No problem. I can
Um,
still hear you well.
Wonderful. Um, uh, Value and appreciate the time to be alone in my thoughts, to think through about what is happening in my life, what has happened in my life, and how I should proceed with my life. I think to some people, including my father, who I just had breakfast with, he even mentioned that to me too, kind of unsolicited. He's mentioned, "Son, you're a person who appears to have a lot on their mind," and I think that's true, not necessarily in a negative way. I don't feel burdened by it, but I think I just have a very kind of a contemplative disposition about myself. So that's one. Two others. Goodness, man. Let me see. Another I would say is I'm curious.
Mm.
Um, I like to learn. I like to understand how things work and why they work in a particular way, especially as it relates to other people's experiences, their life experiences, kind of growing up, being a working professional, being married, being a father. You to realize that life is complex, sometimes a lot of times complicated, and it's just interesting to see how people's experiences have informed their current outlook and how they live their lives. So I would say that would be the second thing, and I would say the third thing is I don't know. I would say not so much as a cop out, but I'm just a low key guy. I like to be low key. Maybe it's that San Diego beach vibe. But I'm no longer in San Diego. A while ago, my wife and I we moved to the East Coast, to the Washington D.C. area. Very much of a different vibe. Um, so it's nice to come back to my natural habitat in San Diego, to kind of be next to the ocean and the beach in this kind of low key, mellow environment. So those are my three words for you. Or
I think those are very thought-provoking words that seem very spot on. So you know yourself really well. And yes, you are a thinker and you ask questions and you want to know. And you are low key, which I think really is a great quality because you can handle things that come at you without getting all riled up and worked up over them, which is especially in this very fast-paced life that we have, is a really good quality to have.
I couldn't agree with you more. Not only in the present and rapid decision making and the things that come up unexpectedly, which require quick thought or quick action. But just in terms of how I like to view it, just keeping my sanity in the midst of the complexities and chaos in life, just having that opportunity, that natural disposition, in addition to an interest kind of in that contemplative life, just to be alone with one's thoughts, or I think in other words, in prayer, contemplating again,
Mhm.
where my life has gone, and what I should do moving forward. So it's very rejuvenating and refreshing, and ultimately necessary.
Good words, and just you described that all so well. I really appreciate that.
Mhm.
All right, let's play two truths and a lie.
Oh,
Now,
goodness.
this is going to be trickier because I know you. So say three things about yourself and let me see if I can tell which one isn't correct.
Oh, goodness, Rechelle. All right. Let me see here. Now, is the intent to stump you? Is that
Yeah,
part of the intent
yes,
here?
that's part of it, and part of it is just we get to learn a little bit more about you without,
Sure.
making
All
it a
right.
little more fun.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Two truths and a lie. Okay. Um, let's see. What first truth?
No, no, no. Don't tell
Oh,
me which
don't so
one's
don't say
true.
the truth.
No,
Okay, I'll just say
just
three
say
things. Yeah,
three
okay.
things, mix them
Got
all
it.
up, mix them all
Mix
up.
them all
Say
up.
three things, and I'll
Yeah.
see if I can tell.
Okay. Well, you know me pretty well. That's
I
the
know
challenge
that's
from
you
here
have
too.
to,
So,
yes, you have to work harder.
all right. Let's see. One, growing up, I only ate cheese quesadillas and spaghetti with butter and Parmesan cheese.
Okay.
Two, uh, I've flown aboard the aircraft that is used for Air Force Two, uh, that the vice president flies and occasionally the president.
Okay.
And three, I've been to uh, over 30 countries.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the quesadillas and pasta, I do happen to know that's true.
That was
So
an easy
I
one.
can
Yeah, I
set that one
figured.
aside. Okay, the next two are 30 countries, and then you've been on Air Force Two.
Yeah.
And I know you work, in the government field, so I think that's entirely possible. Number two, the flying on Air Force Two. And then the third one, you've been to 30 countries. I'm going to go with that one as the false, only because you used a number and I knew number one was, see, this is my thought process. I knew number one was true. So now I'm down to 50-50. So the fact that you threw in 30, now it could be 29, it could be 31. And I think you have been to a lot of countries for work. So how did I do?
You're spot on. You're spot on.
Okay.
So I've been fortunate to travel to a number of places, but not quite 30. I think
Okay.
your reasoning again is spot on. So
Okay.
if you're ever interested in detective work, you may want to
Oh,
take that up.
oh my gosh, I do enjoy, and that's probably why I like this one, is because it's kind of fun to sort of play with it all. Oh, that is
Yeah,
so great. David, one of your favorite movies of all time, because this is kind of revealing. It's not like
sure.
there's only one, because we have a bunch, but which one do you want to share with us? One of your favorite ones?
That's a great question. And if Haley, my wife, was listening to this, she would probably give me a real hard time, in a loving and joking way. I would say one of my all-time favorite movies is Fiddler on the Roof.
Wow.
Yes, I don't even know if you knew that about me, but that's actually one of my
No.
all-time favorite movies. I haven't seen the play, or at least the Fiddler on the Roof in a play setting, which I would love
Right.
to.
Right.
But I would say that was one of my all-time favorite movies. I can thank Mimi, my grandmother, your
Yes.
mother, for that. Um, but why do I like Fiddler on the Roof? One, at least the movie, again, the original movie. Of course, I think the cinematography is great, the acting
Oh,
is great, the
yes.
music is wonderful. And it
Hmm.
was primarily, I would say, the first reason, which was of interest to me, was the reason, but as I've gotten older, and I think there may be a theme throughout our discussion of kind of this evolution of kind of how I see the world and think about thinking and think about things. This evolution of how I see and understand Fiddler on the Roof, it evolved from an interest in the music, which again I'm still very interested in, really appreciate the music, to the underlying story, the narrative of the movie, especially with the main character Tevye,
Hmm.
who is grappling with staying true to his tradition, which is very important to him and his life, his family, but also a modernizing and an evolving society, and
Right.
that struggle between kind of balancing again that tradition and modernity. And I feel that I can relate to a large extent. I think to me, I value tradition a lot, um, not only in the religious sense, but even tradition among the family. So one
Hmm.
tradition that I loved growing up and I looked forward to every year, involved yeah, Christmas Eve at Mimi's house. You know,
Yes.
she would host Christmas Eve, and we'd all get in, all congregate in her little house, and she would generally have some type of meat, a chicken, and she would make her famous mashed potatoes, and kind of that reoccurrence and that intimacy around Christmas was always very meaningful and special to me. And it was a little bit of a challenge when the family decided, hey, we have to pass on the torch, given
Right.
that Mimi was increasing in age. But yeah, I do value and appreciate that tradition, but again do realize that the world evolves, the world changes,
Yeah.
and trying to navigate that balance.
Right. I'm just picturing my mom, your grandmother, Mimi, just she's going to cry throughout this entire. She gets verklempt over, like, I have to tell you this quick story, even on air. It is
Sure,
so
sure,
darn
sure, sure.
cute. But you have a tradition of talking with her each week, which she very much looks forward to. And this was a few years ago. And she was recounting to me a little, just like, oh, I talked to David and and he was making dinner and he made homemade pasta. I mean, she couldn't even get out the whole thing that you had made pasta from scratch, and for some
Yeah.
reason this touched her so deeply that she could not even get out the words without just welling up. She just is so sweet. We love her. We
Oh,
love her.
yeah. No, thank you for sharing that, and maybe that just speaks to just how obsessed maybe I was with eating spaghetti and butter and cheese growing up. It's just having this emotional effect on some of my family members.
Yeah, and the fact that you made it homemade, I think, was she just thought that that was very special, which is,
Oh,
well,
that's
that's pretty
great.
cool. Yeah.
That
Cool.
is, and it's well, just speaking on making homemade pasta, it's a lot of fun. I would encourage it to anyone who would be interested. It's a little bit of a challenge at first, but quality and freshness, you're not going to beat it.
Right. Oh, that sounds great. So, who is a person who's inspiring you these days?
That's a good question. I don't think there's really one single individual that's
Right.
really inspiring me, and the reason is, and this isn't necessarily a criticism of other people, but um, you know, you know, as I mentioned, life's complex. People are complex. We have our strengths and our weaknesses, and unfortunately, well, I don't say unfortunately. I think realistically, and I think this is just a matter of kind of acknowledging, humanity, human nature, and ultimately the humility of humans. We're not perfect in our totality. So, what I'm thinking more of, or how I frame it isn't so much of, hey, who's that single person, but drawing upon kind of the strengths of, or in the strengths of a multitude of people
Right.
that I interact with and encounter. Um, so there are a number of people. Some folks include, close family members, such as, going back to when I was a child, a young person. I very much looked up to my maternal grandfather, given his background. In short, he was born during the Depression, had to make his way through school and college, which he did. He dedicated his life to public service in the military, and raised a good family, and did his best, ultimately acknowledging that, and ultimately at the end of the day, like everyone, he had his shortcomings and he was a flawed human being as well. But I get a lot of inspiration in a lot of people that I encounter, also at work. Um, you know, these are individuals, both men and women, who are public servants dedicated to serving the people, who don't do it for money or prestige or status, but they seek to advance the common good here in the United States, and the sacrifice that they put forth, um, to advance their respective job, their particular mission, is awe-inspiring. So this kind of common theme of kind of that public service, that self-sacrifice in a sense, as evidenced by my grandfather, as evidenced by my colleagues, as evidenced by my own father, who is a career public servant as a firefighter for 30 plus years. Those are the individuals who give me that inspiration.
That's great. And there's a theme in there that I think speaks to perseverance, to serving, and to diligence and being intentional.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think what's really attracted me in of those other people, and has been very influential in my own vocation, at least my professional vocation, again, is very much that service to others. Um,
Hmm.
it's very difficult for me to think of my life, or to go forth with my life, uh, outside the context of service
Hmm.
to others, and acknowledging that can manifest itself in a variety of ways. You
Right.
certainly, you don't have to be a public servant to serve others, but it seems to me, um, and again, I was just reflecting on this this morning, over breakfast with my dad, again, who's a public servant, of really how central and how critical it is, for
Mm,
me to serve others in this case.
right. Oh, that's wonderful. What's a piece of wisdom you keep handy?
I would say kind of two things. Two things come to mind with that. One is, um, seeking your authentic self,
Hmm.
and the other is remembering other people's humanity. So the first
Beautiful.
one, yeah, thank you. The first one, as it relates to being, finding one's authentic self, is, I view it very much as not so much of, be whoever you want to be necessarily, or do whatever you want to do, but more within kind of a religious or spiritual context of, who, God ultimately is calling you to be. What is your
Hmm.
vocation in life? And again, not just from a spiritual, I mean, not simply from a professional perspective as a
Right.
job, but in terms of vocation as a parent, as a friend, as a citizen, even as a single person, so on and so forth,
Right.
and being able to contemplate and discern, um, where God is leading you, and how He wants you to live your life, kind of understanding and following His will in that sort. And I think in doing so, which I suppose is admittingly very hard, or can be very hard. I think it helps bring about or bring forth uh, qualities and characteristics ultimately that one are rooted in love, and that two manifest itself in, I think, just ultimately being a good person,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of if you're a guy or a gal or kind of whatever disposition or orientation or purpose or vocation. Um, and it comes down to, ultimate those critical things that, we try to live by, and I think everyone aspires to live by the, being, respectful, being a person of integrity, being a person
Mm-hmm.
of service.
Yes.
Because I don't think if you're living your authentic life, I think it makes it even more challenging to be all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little commentary on the first one. The second one is remembering people's humanity, and that's something that I've kind of contemplated and dwelled on over the last number of months, particularly in reflection or as it relates to our current political discourse. Now, again, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to get political here by any means, but I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, especially here in the United States, of how much uh, how much politics and uh, kind of political affiliation influences or frames our outlook on almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
And with that comes some pretty profound disagreement and fundamental disagreement, which is perfectly fine. But hearing people's perspectives and feelings as it relates to somebody of the opposite political persuasion,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of how dehumanizing it can be sometimes.
Right.
It's kind of quite depressing. Um,
Yeah.
so I think
Yes.
that's kind of the other thing that I try to keep in mind is, ultimately at the end of the day, again, there's a lot of people in this world of a variety of opinions and beliefs. And with that, ultimately at the end of the day, they're still human. They're still
Right.
our brothers and sisters in a
Right.
sense.
Well, that's
So
a wonderful thing to keep in mind is that when we disagree with people, keeping in mind their humanity and then the way we treat people and the policies that we have politically, hopefully would um, manifest and come out in ways where we treat others humanely, which
yeah,
is not necessarily always the case.
yeah, no, exactly. So,
Yeah.
hoping
So
hoping for that paradigm shift,
yes,
one day.
yes, yes. Okay. So we are in our deep dive that
Hmm.
we're at this point in the podcast. As you know, we're in the It's Raining Men. What do they really think series? And so we're going to have a conversation around some different questions. What do you think makes a man a man?
Mm, I that's a great question, and I have been toiling and pondering this for many days. And with that, I kind of came to two different interpretations. So maybe you could help me maybe flesh this out and unpack it a little more. So, my first thought was, my first inclination of what makes, I almost viewed it as what makes a man like a good man, like what a man ought to be.
Sure.
And then the other one was, I think more simply, what makes a man in the sense of, how does a man compare to a woman, beyond just the anatomical differences.
Right.
So, I leave it to you as the host if there's a particular way you want me to go with
No,
it, or if
no,
there's
there are no
a
wrong
particular
answers.
interpretation.
There are no wrong answers here.
There, yeah, and I figured that's what you're gonna say. So I'm gonna probably tackle the first one.
Okay.
And man, I think what was really difficult about this one, and which took a long time, was I think I think we're kind of undergoing, in a sense, maybe a kind of a change in our understanding of what means to be men and women, and I think a lot of it has to do, of course, culturally, socially, and generationally.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to hear what future men have to say, especially of different ages, different generations, and kind of states in life. But with that, not to necessarily sound like a broken record, but I kind of go back to my commentary a little bit about the authenticity.
Mm,
And it was actually in contemplating this question that um, I came to my thoughts on that authenticity. And the reason why authenticity stood out to me was, I feel like some more of the specific kind of characteristics and descriptive words of men are quite limiting. And I think men are a little more dynamic than just simply um, some of these kind of certain words, especially as it relates to what men ought to be. So I think ultimately a man becomes a man. A man is a good man, if they're able to identify again their authentic self,
hmm.
being able to not only identify but really live out, who they are called to
Yes.
be. And what I really appreciate about it is, again, that there's no one solution, there's no one answer.
Right.
Based on one's circumstances, experiences, and outlooks in life, they can essentially mold themselves to who they are called to be.
Hmm. I think that's a fabulous answer, because authentic really, within that answer, there are endless possibilities. And
Sure.
yeah, and I think that it's such a great way to frame that because yes, I mean everybody it would be, wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody did live out who they were called to be? That's not necessarily the case, and I think that's one of the reasons around, having conversations like this to encourage people to be their authentic self, to be who God has called them to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And reiterating the fact that I think for a number of years, especially in certain generations, there was a mindset of a man should act a certain way. And I think there's certainly some value in that. There's some kernels of truth, but ultimately at the end of the day, right? People in general, regardless of if you are a man or a woman, I think we are just so much more dynamic and have so much more to offer than kind of these narrow definitions of
Right.
sorts.
Absolutely. What's something you want women to know about men?
Hmm. I think building off on that, men aren't as simple as we sometimes are portrayed or come across. Now, I certainly think there are aspects of men in the way we think and operate that align with or support this belief of simplicity, and I don't necessarily view simplicity in a negative way or with
Right.
bad connotation, but again, I think us men have so much more to offer, even in the spiritual and emotional dimension. And I think just sometimes we limit ourselves,
Yes.
um, and do not feel comfortable for whatever reason, being able to share it. And that's something that I've worked out and come to the kind of the understanding and the conclusion, well after I was well into my adult years. So it's not like I, figured this out in high school or middle school, but especially undergoing profound challenge, life challenge. seeing the value and the benefit of really being able to open up and to share and to kind of shed this perception of what maybe society wants me to be, but instead, again, contemplate what it means to be, the my authentic self, and to
Right.
live that out.
No, I like that theme that being authentic is really run through really this whole conversation, which I think you have thought about it a lot. And yeah, I think it's just a really good point for people to take away. What advice, now, I'm probably expanding on this a bit. What advice are you going to give, or do you plan on, or think about giving to your son about becoming a man?
Yeah, so not to sound like a broken record, and I'll certainly unpack this more for the sake for the conversation. Of course, so we've talked about a lot about the authenticity, and maybe the next step is more of like, hey, how do we get to that point?
Yes.
How do we come to understand what our authentic self is? And I don't know necessarily what the answer is. And I of course I don't think there is a clear cut answer, and it takes years, it takes life experiences, it takes turmoil to ultimately figure that out. But I think if I were to give my son little David, by the way, and even my daughter Maggie, some advice on that front, I would say, hey, life, you're going to be busy throughout life pursuing your vocation, your dreams, your desires, as it relates to work, as it relates to building a family, if they so choose, uh, and just experiencing life at large. I'd say, make it a point to carve out time, to cultivate, to develop, to enhance,
Mm,
your spiritual life. Um, and it's through that mechanism, I think, where we can discern, again, our authentic self.
yes.
We can discern through our life experiences, who we are called to be and how we are to live our lives.
Mm,
And I have to admit, again, that's something that has taken quite a bit of time for me to, I would say at this point, appreciate. I'm still a work in progress in being able to implement and execute to its fullest extent. But it really dawned upon me just over the last number of years, as I was engrossed in my professional life, raising two children, overcoming or enduring some health challenges. And it was the totality and all of these things that kind of at one point in time, I was just thought to myself, I just need to stop for a second to kind of carve out that time for
hmm.
myself to help not only process things, but again to kind of discern, where I'm being, what I'm being called to be, and where I'm being
Right.
led.
It feels um it feels like you're being intentional, back to that word, and then it also feels like through that intention you recognize that, kind of like not just to catch our breath, but then to really take time to think. And our lives have gotten, become so fast, so speedy, hurrying on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, that I think sometimes we don't, that discipline of stopping, just stopping everything and just taking a moment and prayerfully, thoughtfully having that time. I think it's harder and harder to get in that habit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I still reflect of and still am challenged by finding that time,
Hmm.
and it's not so much. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not necessarily because there's all these external factors, which of course, do influence it. But it's ultimately, it comes down to me in making time to
Hmm.
do it. Mm. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And as I've gotten older and taken on more responsibility, it just gets harder and harder. My wife and I, Haley, we sometimes stop and think. We reminisce, not so much reminisce, but reflect upon life before children, life with one child, and now life with two children. And we think like, oh man, we thought we were so busy when we had no children. I was like, how could we get any bit busier? We had our first child, Maggie, and got adjusted to that. And, the busyness of being a parent with one child. And we thought to ourselves, man, we're so busy now. How could we get any busier? And then we have a second child. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's a whole nother level. Um, but somewhere in some time, being able to find that quiet time, um, has been really uh, beneficial for me.
Hmm. Love that. Is there anything in conclusion that you didn't get to that you wanted to say before we wrap up here?
Mm. Well, if not so much well, maybe a statement of sorts. If anyone's found the way to figure out how to be one's authentic self to the greatest degree, let me know. Still looking.
Well, you're doing it though, and I think your point that you are a work in progress. I mean, we're a work in progress until our last breath, whether we actually choose to continue to evolve and be that work in process, or we choose to stay stuck, or we choose to settle. They're all choices, you're still in progress, whether you're actually moving forward-ish or not, however you want to frame that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the life's journey. Just
Yes.
have to fight the good fight, race the good race, I suppose.
Yes. Thank you, David. What a just a joy this has been to have this kind of a conversation with you. I'm so delighted.
Of course, and again, thank you so much for the invitation to be with you today to contemplate these great questions.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, David. It truly is.